Hey there, thank you so much for stopping by to check out my newest video. And in this video, we're going to take a look at what the developer calls a self-hosted, open source, unconventionally named vehicle maintenance records and fuel mileage tracker called LubeLogger. So if we actually take a look at the LubeLogger.com webpage, we've got some features down here that we're going to talk about real quick. Then we're going to take a look at my instance, and then we're going to talk about getting it installed, that sort of thing. So first things first, taking a look at the homepage here, we talked about kind of the self-hosted, open source, unconventionally named vehicle maintenance records and fuel mileage tracker. That's a long sentence, but it gets a little weirder, and we're going to talk about that. But if we scroll down, we can see that you can keep track of your maintenance, repair, and upgrade records, keep track of your fuel economy, which includes miles per gallon, UK miles per gallon, and liters per 100 kilometers. So you've got some different options for your units of measure, which I appreciate. You can keep track of taxes, like registration, or as they say, a going fast tax, that sort of thing. You can keep track of supplies. They don't have any limits on how many vehicles that you can actually maintain and keep records of, which I super appreciate. There are some self-hosted services that still implement limits, and I guess I get why, but I'm glad that these guys didn't do that. You can import existing records from a CSV, and they specifically name Fuely here. So if you use Fuely to maintain or keep track of your fuel mileage consumption, that sort of thing, you can take those records and just directly import them, and I love that. You can attach documents for each of the different records, so receipts, PDFs, invoices, whatever you need to upload, you can attach that to this. We'll take a look at that as well. There's a way that you can keep track of your to-dos. You can set recurring reminders. There's dark mode. I love dark mode. There's a mobile small screen support, which I love. This means that it will actually look good on your cell phone, and I'm so glad that that's actually the case. I know that it's more common these days for that to happen, but it really wasn't that long ago that mobile wasn't considered when doing front-end development. So I'm glad that they actually took the time to make sure that it would work properly that way. There is the option for basic authentication for security. You do have to enable that. We'll take a look at that. That's super easy. There are API endpoints if you want to integrate with something else. And there is a consolidated vehicle maintenance report that you can take a look at. They've got a demo down here that we could look at, but I don't want to look at theirs. I want to look at mine. Just because I know that my data is real versus whatever people are putting in. I know that it resets every 20 minutes, but it's whatever. But before we get into that, let's actually take a step back. I actually found LubeLogger 5 months ago or so. Here in the self-hosted subreddit, Chief Aoki said that he made a LubeLogger and then kind of talks about what it does. We've already talked about that, but this is where it kind of made its first appearance. And even if we get into the comments down here, your name had me triple checking what sub I was viewing, which he responded saying the girlfriend basically said the same thing. But apparently he used AI to help come up with the name. So that's why it's named what it is. And I think just the name of it is kind of amusing and will get people to try it out, if nothing else. So that's how I originally found it. But then here recently, Ethan Shawley at Self-Host had Ivan from LubeLogger on the podcast. So if you haven't checked that out, you should. I'll have links to all of this, of course, in the video description. And as I mentioned in my previous video, if you're not subscribed to the Self-Host newsletter, you should be. Ethan sends out an email once a week with just new goings on in the self-hosting community, updates on old stuff, that kind of thing. So definitely check out the Self-Host newsletter if you haven't already. Okay, so with that introduction out of the way, let's actually take a look at my current instance of LubeLogger, where I've been kind of keeping track of some of my car's maintenance, that sort of thing. If we take a look, this is the homepage. When you get here, this is more or less what you'll see once you've added some cars, obviously. There's the garage, which is the first page you're going to land on, where you'll see all of the different cars that you have available for your maintenance records, that sort of thing. We've got a calendar up here where you can see upcoming maintenance services, reminders, things like that. Well, it should all show up here in the calendar area. We've got settings. This is obviously what it says it is. We can enable or disable dark mode. We can enable CSV imports. We can use imperial calculations for fuel economy. If you're in America, this is probably a setting that you'll want to enable. However, you can also turn that off and use the UK MPG calculation if you want to go that route as well. You can sort lists in descending order, newest to oldest, for instance. You can replace $0 costs with 3 dashes. You can use 3 decimal points for fuel costs. There's a bunch of different things in here that you can enable and disable to your liking to get the best possible setup for what you need, right? That's what we're doing here. However, there's this enable authentication is turned off by default. And when you enable it, you'll be asked to create a username and a password. We'll take a look at that here in a moment, but just know that by default, you won't have authentication turned on, but there is a little toggle here. The reason I bring this up now is because if you go over to the demo that they've got set up on LubeLogger.com, you won't see that. And I wanted to make sure that that you would see it here, and you'll know that that's how to turn it on. But it's right here. It's at the bottom. We'll take a look at actually enabling that later. But just know that you can enable or disable authentication based on your security requirements. So over here on the right side of the page, we can enable or disable service records, repairs, upgrades, fuel, odometer, taxes, notes, reminders, supplies, planners, and then you've got options for default, tab, and language. And then you can create and restore backups. You can manage languages. And then there are additional fields for server-wide settings and reminders. So that's all that's going on back here. And of course, down here, they give a shout out to all of the different dependencies that they used for this. And I dig that they're actually giving credit where credit is due. So I appreciate that very, very much. But let's go back to the garage. We're going to take a look at this car. This is actually the car I drive. I drive a 2010 Kia Forte. It is black. That was actually not my car. My car's got stickers on it to make it identifiable. So I didn't want to use an official image of my car for this tutorial. It is a 2010 Kia Forte. This is not my license plate, just because, again, I didn't want to give away that information. So you can click on this, and the first thing you're going to see is your dashboard, where you can get expenses by type, and they're all kind of color-coded, which I appreciate. Next to that, you've got expenses and distances traveled by month. Now, what I have noticed about this is that this is just, say, July in general, because this $440.55 was 2 years ago. So it's doing month by month, not year by year. So anything that you enter at, in July, for instance, will always show up in July here. Maybe so you can keep track of which months tend to be more expensive year over year. That's my assumption anyway. But that's just something to keep in mind is like, again, this expense for July, $440, that was 2 years ago. And it's not even July yet. So that's something else to think about. And then of course, no data found, create reminders to see visualizations here. And of course you can change your metrics. You can say, 2024 only. And then, I guess this is all time. Then you can break it down by year. So there is a way that you can get more refined data based on what you're looking for. I appreciate that. Collaborators, I don't have any collaborators. I'm the only one keeping track in here, but you can add additional users, and then you can do search. Over here, you can vehicle maintenance reports and export attachments. Those are down here as well. If we come across the top, we've got service records. And here we can see that it's been a while. It's been about 18 months. I need to replace my cabin filter, my windshield wipers, and my engine air filter. And if we open this up, I've got the date that I did it. The odometer, I don't know what the odometer was. I wasn't paying attention. This was a year and a half ago. So I just put 1. You have to put in an odometer reading, which I have mixed feelings about. I understand why they do it, but it's not always convenient. So anytime I wasn't sure about what the odometer reading was, I just put 1. But that's for my records. You can handle that how you like. Then, of course, you've got the description of what the item is, how much it cost. You can do additional tags. You can maybe put in filters or maintenance or whatever. And then you can kind of group those kind of things together as well. And then to keep things simple for me, I've been putting in links where for which item I bought for that particular thing. Again, this is a cabin filter, but I've done the same thing with like my windshield wipers. I've got 2 different sizes, as your car probably does too. So I've linked each of those to, or each of those items in the notes, which is optional, but I thought that was a really good place to put that. Again, date, odometer, description, cost, tags. You can upload documents, say receipts, things like that if you wanted to do that. Or you can delete, cancel, or if you needed to make a change, you would click edit right there. And here you can see there's a number of service records, what the total service has been. You can add additional service records by clicking the button there. Again, repairs, there's actually a repair that I need to put in here from right after I first got the car, just again for my own record keeping. But I had to have my clutch and passenger side half axle replaced. That was a fiasco, but it's its own separate thing. So I need to put that in here. I haven't gone out to my car to get the records for it. Upgrades. This is where that $440 and some change was spent. Was putting a 12-inch sub and amp in the back of my car. Of course, then I've got fuel mileage. I've only recently started using this, so I've only got one entry in there. Of course, as I go in here and add more records, this will start calculating things for me. When you add a gas record, you can put in the date, what your odometer reading was, how much fuel you added, was it filled all the way, did you miss fuel up, and this will help it skip the MPG calculation. So maybe you skipped one and forgot to enter it. Well, if you put the new number in there, it's going to think you got like 800 miles on a tank, and that's going to screw up your results. So if you skip a fill up when you're putting your records in, you can just say, hey, I screwed this up. Don't count this against the mileage record. So that's what's going on there. The cost of gas fueled total or unit. Again, tags, notes, and receipts are all on here as well. Taxes, my registration, I just paid that a few days ago, $66 for the year, so I dig that. You can also add notes if you wanted to add notes. You've got that available. And then reminders, maybe you want to set a reminder every 3 to 6 months to go get your oil changed, or once a year to check your filters, or whatever the case is. You can set reminders in here so that you can be reminded of when you need to do things. Yay. And then of course over here, we've also got this option to manage your vehicle. If you click delete, it's going to be like, are you sure? I know it's a simple thing, but just adding those little like, are you sure kind of things makes me feel better about not accidentally deleting records without having to go through multiple steps. So that is kind of what what adding all of your different records looks like. You can come up here and you can change any of this stuff that you need to as far as year, make, model, license plate number. Is it an electric vehicle? Do you want to use engine hours? I know for like diesel engines, that's super important for people. Odometer adjustments, purchase and sold information. When did you buy it? When did you sell it? Those sorts of things. And then of course you can replace the picture, which I probably will after this tutorial is done. So let's go back to our homepage and let's go to the admin panel. So here we've got my username. Go to the admin panel here. And here is where you can create additional users. Now, in order for this to truly work, you will need email set up for this. So what you'll do is you'll just click on generate user token, put in their email address, and then they will get an email that I think needs some work, if I'm being completely honest. Okay, so this is the email that you're going to get, and it's got a token has been generated on your behalf, and here's your token number. It doesn't give a URL. It doesn't give any information about what this email even is. So I'd like to see this built out a little bit more, if at all possible, so that it's like, hey, here's the URL that this was sent from, or something. I feel like this email needs to be more explicit in what it is and why you're getting it and how to use it. That's just a thought, but it's kind of. Anyway, that's the email you're going to get. Just know that it's not very intuitive to know what to do with it. Basically, what you'll do is just go to that URL and put in that token and your email address and a password, and then you can create an account. But none of that is explicitly defined in this email. And the reality is that's not the only place where I kind of feel like the setup process on this Docker application is lacking. So let's talk a little bit where I think this is lacking. We're going to run into this as we're setting it up. And I just kind of want to preface, like I talked about this application in my video last week. I wanted to make this video last week, but I ran into some issues where it just wouldn't deploy. If we take a look at their GitHub repository, they've got 3 different Docker Compose options, one for Postgres, one for traffic, and then just a standard Docker Compose with no database. I even tried deploying this and it wouldn't go. It wouldn't work for me. But I wanted the Postgres database because I wanted a database. I don't care if it's Postgres or not, but I wanted a database for better persistent storage, that sort of thing. The problem is, as I was going through, and that was stupid. Let's try that again. There we go. As I was going through and trying to set it up, it was just like, hey, the app schema doesn't exist. The app schema doesn't exist. The app schema doesn't exist. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, I don't understand what your issue is. I feel like adding the schema to the setup process should have been in the Docker file. Maybe I'm missing something there, but luckily, luckily, there's this troubleshooting section, and there's a whole issue about schema does not exist. And I was like, cool, let's go look at that. So I click this, and it's like, make sure the schema is named app in the database as specified in the Postgres connection string. For more information, see Postgres. Cool. And here's all of this information. But it doesn't ever actually say what's going on here. It's just like, oh, well, you need to log into Postgres and create this schema. Cool. Why didn't you do that? Why, as the developer, didn't you add that? And again, I'm not a database guy. Databases are black magic as far as I'm concerned. But I just don't understand why that schema wasn't added and why more information here wasn't added about how to go about doing that. That frustrated me for a few days. Even after I had it sorted, I was just like, why didn't they just do this? Why didn't they just add this schema to the database? So they've got, like I said, they've got multiple Docker Compose options in here, including this Postgres option with the database and that sort of thing. And also a .env file for the connection strings and that sort of thing with regards to email and the database down here. But that still doesn't fix the issue with getting logged into the database to manipulate the database to add the app schema to it. So because I'm a glutton, I've actually created my own Docker Compose based on theirs. So here we go. docker-compose.yml, services, app, image is LubeLogger's latest. The container name, LubeLogger app, restart unless stopped. Great, love it. It's got volumes for config data, translations, documents, images, temp, log, and keys. You don't need to touch any of that. They've got it all handled for you. And no, I haven't changed any of this. Next, we've got some ports for what port you'll access the application on. If you're already using port 8080, change the left hand that's highlighted here. Don't change the right hand side of things. It will be bad. Don't do that. Change the left hand side of that. The env file is kind of consistent through all of this. I moved all of the credentials out of the Docker Compose and into the env file for just better, in theory, better security and that sort of thing. We'll take a look at the env file here in just a moment. And I've also got it set so that it depends on the Postgres database. That wasn't part of the original Docker Compose, but I've added it. Next, we've got our Postgres database, version 14, container name, LubeLogger DB, restart and list stop. Again, all of the credentials and everything are in the env file that we're going to take a look at here in a moment. Then we've got a volume for the Postgres data, and then also we're mounting etc/local time as a read-only option so that it can make sure that it's always reading the most current time of your setup. Now, I've added this PGAdmin. This is like, if you're familiar with PHP-MyAdmin, this is that for Postgres. It's just that. It's an interface to go in and manipulate the database as you need to. And we're gonna here in just a minute. But again, we're gonna use PGAdmin. The container name is PGAdmin_container. Of course, you could change that. I don't know why I haven't. Restart is always, it could also be unless stopped. That's up to you. Unless stopped is probably the better option. Also depends on this .env file because we've got some credentials in there. And we've got a volume for PGAdmin data, and that's just to map all of the data for that application. And then down below, we've got volumes for everything up above, so that we've got all of those declared. And that's all there is to this Docker Compose. I know if you're new to Docker, it's going to seem like a lot, but this is actually a relatively simple setup for this. We're actually deploying LubeLogger, Postgres, and PGAdmin with one Docker Compose rather than doing it across 3 different Docker Compose files. So pretty straightforward, all things considered. And then down here below, we've got an env file that we've talked about a couple of times in this little section of the video. We've got languages and that sort of thing up here at the top with the English, US, UTF-8. You'll need to adjust that to your locale if you're outside the US. We've got a mail config, and I don't care if you see any of this. It's not going to matter before this video goes live. So there's my application password that's specific to this email setup for this application setup that, again, will be gone by the time this video goes live. So there you go. Next, we've got Postgres information. This is for the Postgres database. And we've got LubeLogger, LubePass, and LubeLogger for the user password and database. You should change those. But if you change those, make sure you also come down to the very bottom down here where it says Postgres connection equals host, username, password, and database. Make sure that your username, password, and database all match both here as well as on this line down here. Make sure that those match up or you're going to have a bad time. And then we've got the PG default admin email and password. These are the credentials to log into the PGAdmin, the database administration tool. We've just moved all of the credentials out of our Docker Compose and into this env file. So one other thing that I want to mention before we move on to the next section is in this env file, we've got all of this mail config stuff. If you want to get reminders, notifications, password resets, be able to send those tokens to friends and family if you want to invite them, you need to have your email server set up correctly. Otherwise, it won't send email. It won't. So make sure that if you're going to use this for reminders, for updates, for password resets, for creating new accounts, make sure that you've got your mail config set up appropriately so that you can actually get the notifications that you need when you need them. So I just wanted to clarify that. So let's go ahead and actually get this installed. Okay, so here we are. We're on my Proxmox demo testing server. This is where I do my tutorials, and this is where I test things out before I decide whether or not to put them in production on one of the machines behind me in the rack there. You don't have to put this in Proxmox, but I do all of my testing and most of my hosting in Proxmox. But as long as you've got a Docker server configured, most of the rest of this will be just kind of copy and paste. And of course, manipulate it as you need to for your setup. But all I'm going to do is come over here like to this Portainer template, and I'm just going to clone it. I'm going to call this LubeTut, like so. I don't think I've got anything. Nope, that's good. I'll click clone. And again, if you're not sure why I'm doing it this way, I actually made a video about how to deploy Proxmox containers faster in a previous video. And that's all I'm doing here. So be sure to check that video out if you've got questions about what I just did and why I did it. So now I'm going to come over here to LubeTut and I'm going to click start. And then here in a second, we're going to get logged in. Cool. Now I'm logged in. Our IP address in this particular instance is 0.14. I just need that for later. So I'm going to create two files. The first one is going to be a .env file. So I'm going to do nano. You can use the editor of your choice. I just like to use nano.env, like so, and hit enter. And then I'm going to come over to my env file here, and I'm just going to select all of this. I'm going to copy that, and I'm going to come back over, and I'm going to paste this. Again, this is set up for our mail config, for logging, for our Postgres credentials, our PGAdmin credentials, and our database connection string for the application itself. Of course, manipulate this to your needs. Once you're done with that, save and exit. Control-O, enter, and Control-X. And then I'm going to clear my screen with Control-L. And then I'm going to create a docker-compose.yml file, again with nano. Like so. And then I'm going to come back over to here, and I'm going to go ahead and copy this Docker Compose right here. I'm going to come all the way down and copy. Oops, let's try that again. Copy. There we go. And then we're just going to paste that in there with Control-Shift-V or right-click, whichever way makes you happy. Again, you can manipulate this data as you need to for whatever your needs happen to be. I think I'm just going to leave it all like it is and hit Control-O and enter and Control-X. And then again, clear my screen and then do Docker Compose up -D. The -D flag is important here because it's saying, hey, go ahead and just run this, but don't leave the terminal window up and running. So we're just going to run this command like so, and then it's going to pull and deploy all of the containers that we need for this setup. Okay, so that all went well. It's created all of our network. Our volumes have been created. It's creating the couple of containers that we need for the LubeLogger database, as well as the LubeLogger app and the PGAdmin so that we can change the database up just a little bit. So here we are. We've got everything up and running. It just took a couple of minutes. So I'm going to clear my screen. I'm going to do an IPA just so I can get my IP address here again. I'm going to copy this. We're going to go to a new tab, oops, and do a 9443 because we're going to take a look at Portainer here. GP. And then we'll say yes, and then okay. Okay, so now we are logged in. What we're going to do is actually come over to our containers. We want to take a look at the LubeLogger app here, because if I come in, all of this kind of looks fine for right now. It says SMTP is configured for Gmail. That's good. But if we actually try to come over here, let's edit this real quick just to make things easier. Oops, like so. Come back over to containers and then click here and there. Cool. So what's going to happen here? If I try to come in here, we're going to say 2010 Kia Forte. There's my license plate and add new vehicle. Hey, an error has occurred. Please try again. And that's not super helpful. It doesn't tell me what error occurred. But if we come back to Portainer and we take a look at the logs, it says schema app does not exist. And this is that error that's over here in the Postgres stuff. And so we actually need to go in and manually create the schema in our database. So what we're going to do is come back. We're going to open PGAdmin container here, like so. We're going to get logged in with the username and password that was in that env file for PGAdmin, which was my email address. So now we're going to go to servers. We're going to open this up. Add new server. Oh yeah, let's do that. So first thing we're going to do, we're going to call this database, right? And then the connection, the host name and IP address. What we can do here is actually come back over to Portainer. What we're looking for is the database right here. We're going to grab the IP address that it's given it on this network. It's going to be easier if we use the internal IP address for this. So then we're going to put that in. We're going to make sure we don't have any extraneous stuff before or after. The port is fine. The maintenance database, we actually need to get the name of the database, and we can actually get that from over here. Sorry, it's down here. It's in this. The database is just the Postgres database is LubeLogger. So we're going to grab that. And then our password is going to be in that env file as well. So our lubepass is our password. So we're going to add that. And then our maintenance database and the username are both LubeLogger. Click save. And if we open this up, here's our database. There's LubeLogger. We're going to open this up. We're going to come down to schemas. We're going to open that up. And you'll see that it says public, but it doesn't say app. So what we're going to do right here on schema, we're going to right click and say create schema. We're going to say app. Make sure the owner is LubeLogger. All of this is fine. Click save like so. And then just to make sure that we're all good here, what we're going to do is we're just going to restart the application, the LubeLogger application and the LubeLogger database. We're just going to click restart. Cool. So now let's take a look at our logs. Okay. It's rebooted. That's good. We'll come back. We're going to come back over to here. We're going to refresh this page. We're back on LubeLogger, obviously. We're going to click plus. Again, we're going to put in my car, Kia Forte. You have to put in a license plate. You can't skip that. You can change all of these other settings as necessary. And now, add new vehicle. Hey, look, we added a vehicle. No more errors. In fact, if we come back over to here into Portainer and look at the logs, it didn't throw an error, so we're good there. Let's do one more quick thing. Let's come back over. Let's go to settings. Let's enable dark mode because we got to have dark mode. And then let's enable authentication so you can see what this looks like. We're going to click there. We're going to say username and password. Now, I really, really wish this account creation pop-up window made us enter the password twice. It's entirely possible that I just fat fingered that. I don't know that I did. I don't think that I did, but it's possible. So if we click setup, now it's going to make sure that it worked. And there we go. So now we've got our user account here. We can go to our admin panel and we can create new users at this point. We can go into settings and change the things that we need to set up. And then of course we can add and manage our cars here in LubeLogger. Okay guys, there you go. There is how to set up LubeLogger with the Postgres database and adding the PGAdmin management container so that you can add the app schema to the database so LubeLogger can communicate with Postgres. That's a mouthful, but also the thing to keep in mind is once you've added the app schema through PGAdmin, you can just get rid of that container and probably should for security reasons, unless you plan on manually manipulating your data. But That's what the application is for, so you don't have to do that manually. But I think with that said, that kind of covers everything I wanted to cover in this video. If you want to support the channel, there are a few different ways that would mean a lot to me. Liking and subscribing would be great. Lets me know you're interested in this kind of content. Also, you can become a channel member, a patron. I guess those are the only two I've got right now. But if you want to support the channel financially and get ad-free access to my content, and even maybe sometimes some early access, but definitely always free, ad-free access to my content, becoming a patron or a channel member will get you that access. And you can do that over on Patreon for like $1 a month. So that's that. That's how you can support the channel. Of course, no obligation to. You can just watch the videos when they come out, just like everybody else does. So I think with all of that said, I'm going to wrap this up. Again, thank you for spending a few minutes of your day with me today, and I'll talk to you in the next video.